conjunction, junction, what is your function, how are you structurally misaligned, and stopping your brand from running a hell of an influencer program. Now! Hey, hello from Detroit. I'm Joel. I am Brad. We are happy to be with you again.
So here's what we're talking about today. Structural barriers within a company or within their agency that prevent them from doing influencer right. There are a lot of brands that have had a horrible experience for influencer, and when that happens, it hurts my heart, and angels shed tears when you don't have a good experience with influencers. So we're going to talk about a few things today about where things go wrong and what are the big structural misalignments. Let's get to it.
Please don't make angels cry. Please.
We've seen a couple things along the way where we just see so clearly that there's a way that a company is organized that makes them almost like certain to have a horrible experience working with influencers.
Right, it's true.
Because influencers are a different animal. In their marketing departments, their legal department, their regular department, whatever, it's set up for a different kind of media. It's set up primarily for TV. Right. It's set up primarily for digital, and their display got rolled into their their search and SEM team. They might have a different social team, just whatever, however they're organized, however they're structured.
Right.
It's a problem. So we've got a couple different things that we want to point out just to be really, really clear. All right, first one, they might have separate creative and media buying teams. Why is that a problem?
Yeah, so just from a high level, this happens from years and years of doing things one way. Yep. And so companies might have new, amazing products. I'm looking at you, automotive industry, but you have an old way of doing things, and the old way of doing things worked for a long time. Like, hey, bring all the smart, creative people into a room, come up with a campaign, come up with a slogan, come up with a high-level concept, and then once you have that, then throw it over the fence to people who are very efficient and very analytical in terms of where do you buy media to communicate the message that was created by the creative team. Yep. So things are thrown over the fence, and that works great, except not for influencer at all.
Well, it works great when people are watching TV, but like newsflash, 47% of 25 to 44 aren't watching TV anymore. So you don't have access to that anymore.
Right.
So your audience has changed. Therefore, your model has to change.
Right, exactly.
It has to change. All right.
And so yeah, influencers are the smartest people in the room when it comes to how to connect with their audience. Don't try to dictate to an influencer how to connect with their audience. They're the smart ones, they're the creatives, therefore do the media buy and then let them take over the creative with a little bit of swim lanes. But that's the way it's got to be done to be effective in influencers. So that's structural barrier number one.
Yes. Big structural barrier number two, let's put it on the bottom. You have a separate branding and acquisition team. If you have organizationally separated branding from acquisition, you will almost certainly not have success in influencer. You have thoughts on that?
I do.
Okay.
I mean, miraculously, we are humans, and we can be impacted by branding events that we might see at a baseball game or on a TV commercial, and yet we would still respond to a direct acquisition campaign when we see a Facebook ad, or we will respond when there's an SEO. So like a lot of things, influencers, the most obvious one, is we're actually going to be impacted on multiple dimensions. So if I see a YouTube influencer advocating for a product, I might not buy it right then, but I think, wow, this person who I like, trust, and respect has advocated for this brand when I need a product in that category. You're damn right that's going to be the first one that I look at, even though you're not going to be able to track that if I don't use the particular code inside of a video in this case. Yep. So, like, look, there's great metrics for branding. There's great metrics for acquisition. Why on earth would you keep them separate? I don't know. Bring them together because there's value across the entire marketing funnel. And this really gets to a challenge that a lot of brands have in terms of measurement. And it's just not asking the right questions. It's not finding the right partners to be able to measure things appropriately across awareness, consideration, and conversion. I don't know. Other thoughts you have on this one?
No, I look again. I think it's an antiquated organizational structure that made sense when the primary way to go out into the market was going to be through TV, through digital, display ads,
right.
Maybe some podcast, whatever, radio certainly. That made sense that your branding team and your acquisition team was different, and you have dollars going to different buckets because it makes sense to separate branding out of pure play acquisition, right? Again, it doesn't work for influencer, and as influencers becoming a bigger and bigger part of companies' budgets, they need to have a model that works because influencer is branding and it's also acquisition, and it needs to be treated as such in the exact same way that TV is also branding and acquisition at the same time. And smart companies get that, and they have a model that accommodates that. So no, I would say, all right, point 3, we're going to keep chugging along here. Using only one agency.
Yeah, this one's interesting because a lot of brands have an agency of record, an AOR, and that's great, right? So it makes all the sense in the world. If you're building a new house, you're going to hire a general contractor as opposed to hiring an electrician, a plumber, a mudder for your plaster, and so on and so forth. So the AOR model works and it makes sense. However, AORs generally don't know how to work with influencers.
Except when it comes to anything new or risky.
That's exactly where I'm going, is that like in the old days, companies used to say no one got fired for going with IBM. It dates me a little bit saying that. But similarly, when you're an agency of record, why would I take the risk or rock the boat by letting some Yahoo influencer talk about the brand and put my millions and millions and millions of other dollars that I'm running for the brand at risk? Well, the reality is there's a lot of things that you could do, which we've talked about in a lot of videos, and we can share more, not today, but about ways that you can mitigate that risk. And influencer is actually no more risky than using a celebrity endorsement or any third-party individual, as long as you do it right and you're thoughtful. But the thing is, these agencies of record, they don't know that. It's not their core competency, and in their defense, they don't have the relationships to be able to make things come to life in a way that is safe for a brand. But structurally, when a brand is only using one agency of record, that is a big problem for influencer marketing and can be the reason, in fact, why your influencer program is stalled.
Well, it almost inevitably is, because if I'm an AOR, I'm not going to risk this huge budget that's going to TV and digital and whatever else to risk it over here. You got to either take it in-house or use a separate influencer agency and keep those two totally apart and separate, because otherwise, once the AOR gets into it, it's going to be a turf war, and I don't blame them. I would, if I was an AOR, I'd do the exact same thing. But all it does is guarantee that your influencer programs are not going to work. All right, last one, moving on. This one gets a little bit wonky, however, but when you as a brand or through your agency, when you give final control to your legal department or your regulatory department, this ain't going to work. Like, honestly, don't even bother. If you have completely outsourced your messaging and advocacy of your brand to your legal team, you should not be doing influencer, because listen, I don't think it's all that controversial to say that legal departments need to justify themselves, and they need to they need to justify their own job and their own, considerably comfortable salaries. And so to say no, we're not outsourcing any kind of advocacy to the influencer community. It's one of the easiest things for them to do. It's like, well, what do we do about brand safety issues? And it's such an easy play for them to make to justify their own value that they do it over and over and over again. And I get their mandate is to protect the brand. I totally understand. That makes sense. But new reality. Your audience isn't in the place that it used to be. You need to be an influencer, and that's going to take some adjustment. And you have got to rein your regulatory and legal partners, your departments, however you're structured, you have got to rein them in. You have to be very, very clear.
Yes.
You can comment on this little piece of the much bigger picture. What you don't get to do is you don't get to have authority over this whole picture.
I think there's a really, really important distinction here between minimizing all risks for a brand, which unfortunately is what a lot of legal and regulatory teams do, is they want to minimize every risk, and talking about what is clearly out of bounds, right? And just interpreting the law and knowing where it's like, no, this is clearly illegal. And so when a legal is trying to minimize every single risk, they're cutting things that are going to be effective. They're eating into creative. You're going to piss people off, and you're going to be a lot less effective. You're going to be a lot less real. So that fine line between minimizing risk and interpreting things that are inbounds and out of bounds, that's a big difference. And when legal and regulatory parts of a brand have the rights to just work to minimize risk, that is a problem, and you'll be
you're
less
going to get
effective.
Stale, anodyne, vanilla influencer content. And it's not going to work, and no one's going to be happy. And lose. Okay.
Yes.
Wow. That felt more efficient than it probably actually was. So we should wrap it up. Thanks for watching. Follow us on all relevant social media channels, and so long from Detroit.